Welcome to the Sunshine Gardening Podcast, where we dig deep into the world of gardening in Kentucky. In today's episode 41, we're thrilled to have senior meteorologist Matt Dixon from the University of Kentucky's Ag Weather Center. With his wealth of knowledge, Matt will shed light on how weather impacts farming practices and the innovative tools designed to help farmers thrive. We'll also dive into the features of the new Weather Alert app, specifically tailored for the agricultural community in Kentucky, discussing how it can provide critical weather alerts and insights to enhance decision-making. So, tune in as we explore the intersection of weather and agriculture and uncover the exciting advancements in agricultural weather predictions. Get ready for an enlightening conversation right here on the Sunshine Gardening Podcast.
Welcome to the Sunshine Gardening Podcast. This gardening show will equip and inspire avid gardeners with tips and tricks to help them navigate the gardening world. The show will also highlight specific growing requirements for seasonal plants, so the sun will shine brighter over their Kentucky garden. And now, here's that ray of sunshine, garden enthusiast and horticulture extension agent, Kristin Hildabrand, with the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service.
Welcome back to the Sunshine Gardening Podcast, and joining with us today is Matt Dixon. He is our senior meteorologist with the UK Ag Weather Center at the University of Kentucky. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing great today. How are you doing?
Doing good. I'm so glad to have you on the podcast with us because I know that weather is the topic of a lot of conversations here in the state of Kentucky. And I know from year to year that weather can look a little different for us in different parts of the state. I'm hoping that you can share a little bit with us first, just to kick off the conversation today, about your responsibilities as a meteorologist with the UK Ag Weather Center, and tell us a little bit more about what you guys do there.
Yeah, for sure. So our whole goal in the Ag Weather Center is to minimize weather and climate-related surprise for farmers, producers, even your common Kentuckian across the state. We do that in a number of ways, whether that's providing models and tools to farmers and producers, such as spraying conditions, drying conditions, livestock heat stress, cold stress. These are things you're not going to hear on the 6 p.m. broadcast on the local NBC station. So we try to get those ag weather products out to the agricultural community across the state. But I also have a number of other things that I'll do in the background that some folks may not know about. I write the weather summary for the USDA Crop Progress and Condition Report every Monday. That comes out at 4 p.m. I help the National Weather Service with the issuance of frost advisories and freeze warnings. What most folks may not know is those freeze warnings and frost advisories, they're actually based on agricultural susceptibility. So we don't want to issue frost advisories and freeze warnings, every night during the winter season like we just saw this past January, or it'll just get redundant. And then when people really need to take action come spring, cover those strawberries and so on and so forth, we want them to take that action. So anyways, I help the National Weather Service determine when we need those headlines. I help out the State Drought Committee determine the spatial intensity and coverage of drought across the state, mostly on the agricultural side. This has been an issue the past 3 years. I think we've had 3 straight fall droughts in the state of Kentucky. We had some drought conditions during the spring season, early summer season last year, but just looking at how that's impacting agriculture at the time, I know these fall droughts, a lot of folks were looking at the Mississippi River and how transportation was essentially coming to a standstill at time. Sometimes farm ponds are getting low. We need to look for other water resources. Maybe you're not getting a fall cutting, so on and so forth. But yeah, in addition to the tools and models, all those sorts of things, I also help out the university with determining when we need to cancel school. So I'm on the phone with President Capilouto's administration and letting them know just this past couple of days, what's the weather going to be like? Should we have students going to class today? I'll tell you a quick story, and I'll never forget this in my life. Back in 2015, we had a big time snow event here in Lexington. And there was a good possibility of a foot of snow. And it was the first time I've ever heard President Capelluto get on the line. He goes, Matt, give me the forecast. And I said, all right. And I said, Mr. President, I didn't know how to address him, so I'll just go typical politics. Mr. President, again, there's a good possibility we'll see at least a foot of snow. And it seemed like the phone went silent for 20 plus seconds, or probably more like 5. But he just got back on there. He goes, let's just go ahead and cancel for the next 2 days. No questions asked. And usually we go around the room, okay, what's dining services have to say? What's facilities have to say? But it was all on me. So I stayed up till 5 a.m. that night, making sure that forecast verified we got 17 inches. So, but yeah, I also, something most folks maybe don't know also is I'm the meteorologist for UK home football games. So if you go to a football game, there's lightning in the area, like game 1 this past year. I know everyone didn't like me. There was like 4 hours worth of delay before we canceled the game, but I'm constantly monitoring for thunderstorms across the area, lightning, high winds, you name it. I'm also going across the state giving extension presentations. I was just in Logan County last week and gave a presentation on this warmer and wetter climate we've seen the past decade and how that's impacting agriculture. Been telling farmers and producers lately, we're all weather nerds in some way, shape, or form, but we need to be climate nerds also. So that's a little bit about what I do in the background at UK.
I was going to say, I love that. I didn't know some of that. And that's interesting that you got a phone call from the president to really get the lowdown on what the weather is going to be. And it seems like with snow, that's harder to predict compared to some of the other weather episodes, correct?
Yeah, for sure. The temperature profile, not just at the surface, but up through the atmosphere, can play a huge part in the type of precipitation you'll see falling to the surface, whether that's snow, sleet, freezing rain, plain rain, and any mixes within there also. Dry layers aloft can have a huge impact, but it's really that temperature profile during the winter months. It's one of the harder forecasts in this profession.
Yeah. Well, just out of curiosity, what has been your training up until you became a meteorologist? Like, what was your background?
Yeah, good question. So looking at the whole ag weather aspect, putting it all together, I grew up in Southwest Indiana, a town called Vincennes. If you're familiar with that area, it's about an hour north of Evansville. But in that area, I worked on a horticulture-based operation for 7-8 years. That's big watermelon and cantaloupe country in that neck of the woods. So I loved every minute of it out there. I didn't mind the heat and humidity. August came, start of August, and I really look forward to throwing some melons to the wagon and whatnot. But I was always a weather nerd at heart, and I was the local meteorologist on site, just telling my boss, what it's going to be like, so on and so forth. But before I went to college, the event that really pushed me into this profession, we had a F3 tornado. Is the Fujita scale at the time. It's now the enhanced Fujita scale, but it was an F3 tornado that crossed the Ohio River down there in Southwest Indiana and went into southern Evansville and a little town called Newburgh on the east side of Evansville. And just one of the bigger tornadoes we've ever seen in that area. There was ultimately 25 people that died in that storm. And just seeing that devastation, I wanted to help folks moving forward, not only on the ag weather side, but disaster preparedness, things of that nature. And I ended up going to Purdue University, boiler up. I might work at UK, but I still got black and gold flowing through my veins. But I went to Purdue University, got my bachelor's in atmospheric sciences, and then went to Mississippi State and got a master's in geosciences with concentration in applied meteorology. One of the longest names you'll ever come across, but wound up at UK, took the ag side, took the weather side, put them together. And I was lucky, to be honest, for a meteorologist to go to a place where I'm only ultimately 3 hours from home, Vincennes, Indiana. I had other interviews up in Minnesota, Florida, out in Utah, and just lo and behold, this job opened up. And I'll tell you a fun fact. I will say I went to Purdue. I went to a community college at Vincent's University for a couple of years also. But I got to UK. My boss at the time, Tom Pretty, he was a meteorologist here. You might remember him. But it was just so funny because Tom grew up in Indiana, a town called Franklin up near Indianapolis. He went to Vincent's University for 2 years. He then went to Purdue University for 4 years. And he eventually wound up at UK, but it was just funny because he's 40 years ahead of me. And we both basically took the same path to this position. So
I love that. Well, I appreciate you sharing a little bit of kind of your journey to the University of Kentucky. And that's awesome. Mississippi State Extension, they do a lot of great things. And we're so glad to have you here in Kentucky. How long have you been a meteorologist with us with the university? You might have said that and I missed it.
Since July of 2012. So I only have like 27 more years till retirement. So
something to work for. That's right.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. So as your experience with the University of Kentucky, how has that influenced your approach to agricultural weather predictions? What does that look like?
I think it's the people that influence it the most. Being in the university environment, I'm constantly collaborating with specialists to create new products, tools, and models. This has me constantly learning. Again, I grew up on a watermelon operation in Southwest Indiana. Horses weren't too big in Southwest Indiana. Tobacco wasn't a thing in Southwest Indiana. There wasn't much fruit, honestly, in Southwest Indiana. So coming here to the university, I learned about other sectors in agriculture that I was less familiar with. It's been great. And helping those communities, whether it's develop, some disease prediction models for fire blight or orchards and whatnot, that's just one example. I'm currently talking to some forage specialists about the possibility of moving the suggested dates for frost seeding because it's just been so warm in Kentucky during the winter months this past decade. I think 5 or 6 of the top 10 warmest winters on record have occurred in the past decade, and that's a 130-year record now. So this warmer climate we've been seeing is impacting agricultural management and production-related strategies. So working with specialists to determine the best route for our farmers, producers out there, how to progress forward. But working with county agents like yourself helps me identify what the community needs are in terms of ag weather forecast. You all have the deep knowledge of your local area and the weather challenges that come with it. So collaborating with the agents out there creates somewhat of a feedback loop and allows me to improve in what I'm pushing out of the Ag Weather Center here in Lexington. So through extension was new to me coming to the university also, but I get to go out, educate these communities across the state, whether that's on this warmer and wetter shift in our climate recently, or maybe it's just talking something, like disaster preparedness. So we mentioned it earlier. We had some disaster preparedness conferences across the state. I think I gave, 20 of those presentations, but all these natural disasters, they're increasing frequency and just trying to get Kentucky prepared for the next one because it's not a matter of if, but when the next disaster occurs. So just making sure everyone's prepared. But ultimately, it's the people that have really influenced my approach. So.
Yeah, I love working with the people. To me, an extension, being an agent, that's the best part of the job is to work with the people. And just to kind of make a good segue here, it's good for our people to be weather alert and know kind of what the weather's going to give us because, it's Mother Nature and ultimately they're in control. So what prompted the development for the new Weather Alert app? And can you expand upon some of the unique features that app has?
Oh, for sure. So again, I go out and give these extension presentations, and it seems like after every presentation, I get the question, Matt, do you all have a smartphone app? It'd be really nice to have a smartphone app. And we got together with some other folks across the university, UK Land Grant Engagement, and the Southeast Center for Agricultural Health and Injury Prevention. They all funded this app, helped us out. My department also, Biosystems and Ag Engineering. And we developed it, I guess it was about a year and a half, 2 years ago we started. And it went live last February. So it's been online for about a year now. But the whole point is we wanted to heighten awareness during extreme weather conditions. So, again, that preparedness aspect, and then empower Kentucky farming communities with insights for management and production related decisions. We're doing that in a number of ways. First and foremost, we're giving you the current conditions and hourly and daily forecasts for your area. So I've had several producers, farmers already tell me like they'll look at the hourly wind speeds to help them know when to go out and make spray applications. So that's especially important. You know, some of these applications like to drift a little bit out there. So we want to be very careful. So that's just one example of using that hourly and daily data. Looking at drying conditions, livestock cold stress potential. These winter months or this past January was extremely cold, and making sure you mitigated some of that cold stress at times. Looking at radar, I told folks whenever we started this project, I wanted to do it right. In doing so, we actually are paying for a very high resolution radar, and you can be as much of a weather nerd as you want to be. So you can put storm tracks on there. You can put lightning on there. So I can look at the difference between cloud to cloud lightning and cloud to ground lightning on this app. You can overlay it with National Weather Service warning polygons. So if there's a tornado warning heading your way, you can see that polygon on the map. Severe thunderstorm warning, you name it. You get all that information there. You can see where the Storm Prediction Center is putting tornado watches, severe thunderstorm watches. And you can click on any of this on the map to get more information from the SPC and the National Weather Service. But again, you can be as much of a weather nerd as you want to be. One of the coolest characteristics of this app is you get these alerts sent straight to your phone. So if you're under a tornado warning in Bowling Green from the National Weather Service, beep, beep, buzz, buzz, here it comes to your phone. It's another way to get that warning information in a very quick manner. We always tell people to have multiple ways of getting these warning communications, but this is just one more example. Phase 2, we're done with phase 1. It's ready for you all to use. You just go look on the App Store, iOS or Android, type in Weather Alert or Kentucky Weather Alert. The symbol, it's a big green lightning bolt. So look for it on the App Store. It's absolutely free. One thing that's been a big hit is there's been no ads on it. So you get on some of these other weather apps, I won't name names, but it just got annoying to me. You look at the hourly data, ad. You look at the daily data, ad. Radar, oh, you got to pay me $10. So a lot of just for radar, for example, a lot of other apps, you'd have to pay to see lightning on that app. So on ours, you have it absolutely for free. It's through extension. This is there to help farmers and producers across the state. But phase 2, we're going to incorporate our agricultural-based tools and models into the app. So you can look more at the livestock heat stress, cold stress, dry conditions, spraying conditions, you name it, whatever is going to help you on the farm. Phase 3, we're going to focus on disaster preparedness and making that a county-by-county aspect. So if there is an emergency, you can go to this one spot to get phone numbers, maybe shelter locations in your county, just putting it all in one spot so you're not constantly looking what you need to do. But yeah, phase 2 and phase 3, hopefully out the next year or two. Initial phase 1 of the app is done and is available for you all to download.
Yes, I really appreciate the no ads there. I love not having to see that on my screen. And like you said, it's so nice and handy to have it right there, all within the app, and have all these things that you can actually look at, not just the temperature. And there's so much that's right there. I was going to say, do you know how many downloads y'all have had since you've launched the app? I'm just curious.
So I need to check with our app developer again. I'm guessing it's 5 to 6,000 downloads now.
Mm-hmm.
But for the people that have downloaded it, it's being used a lot. There was one month, I can't remember which month it was. It was very active. I'm actually interested to get the data for January. I haven't got that yet, but we had 4.5 million clicks on the app. So again, 5,000 people or so, they're using it and a lot. So we'll see where it goes from here. It's constantly growing. Again, we're going to be working on phase 2 and phase 3. I personally don't see any ag weather apps out there that are free to use. So hopefully we can keep building on this and become the ag weather app go-to in future years. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I like how you also were talking about how farmers can look at the wind speeds, because I know that really does influence when they do make their applications for spray. Are there any other things that the farmers can utilize with the new weather alert app that you all have that you haven't already mentioned?
Yeah, something else. I put out a newsletter. I've been teaching class, so I haven't put one out recently. I'm planning on doing one this week, but it's called the Ag Weather Update. And I incorporated this into a tab on the app. So in this Ag Weather Update, I'm telling farmers and producers what the weather climate's been like the past month or so, what it's going to be like going forward, and any interesting tidbits in the ag weather realm recently. So this next ag weather update, I'm going to focus on the flooding potential in the bluegrass states moving forward the next 2 or 3 weeks. But the rest of February looks extremely wet in Kentucky. I am concerned about the potential for significant flooding across the area, mainly eastern Kentucky. Of course, they've had plenty of issues the past several years, but the ground is essentially saturated with all this snow, rain, ice we've gotten. And this time of year, all the vegetation is dormant. There's nothing utilizing that moisture. A lot of it's just turning into runoff. And I was just driving around the bluegrass recently, and you look at the area streams, the rivers and whatnot, they're starting to rise at a good clip. So that'll be something we're watching, especially as we're going into the early stages of the growing season next month. So, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you giving us some of that feedback, especially for going forward for 2025, what that might give us. And you've already talked about it's getting warmer. Trends are kind of showing that. I do want to, in the last couple of minutes that we have here, can you kind of give us like any common misconceptions about ag weather that focus the forecast that you might encounter too? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a lot of folks will focus on the short-term weather predictions. Of course, those will always be the most accurate, and a lot of folks may steer away from longer-term forecasts. But to be honest, the long-range outlooks going out 2 weeks are pretty solid nowadays. There's always that comment, oh, you meteorologists are only right 50% of the time. I get it. But our forecasts have continually improved with technology taking a step forward. Of course, the new thing is AI. We'll see where that goes. But we have the Kentucky Mesnet here in the state of Kentucky now. That's helping us with predictions also. But if I go back to that outlook aspect, sure, going out a week from now, it's hard for me to say for sure it's going to be, let's say, 27 degrees for a high next Tuesday or Wednesday. But I am confident whenever I can say going out the next week or two, temperatures will be below normal, near normal, or above normal. Same thing with precipitation. And that can really give farmers an idea of how to plan their management strategies moving forward, not just the next 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, but going out 2 weeks. So again, planting season's going to be on us before we know it. So looking at those outlooks, getting an idea, when will I see a dry window coming up? I'm talking with another specialist here in my department, and we've been looking at baling days. And Baling days have ultimately been decreasing during the spring season here in Kentucky because of how wet it's been. So making sure we nail those dry windows whenever they come, and because you don't know when the next dry window will be. So anyways, just talking about forecast accuracy, it's been getting a lot better and it will just continue to get better. Will we ever be perfect? No, we can't take into account everything that's happening out there, but it's definitely going in the right direction. Some folks may look at me and think all we're doing is looking at these models, these forecast models, and there's a lot more that goes into it. Just looking at the local observations across the state at the time, the models just, they don't tell us everything. We have to look at radar trends. We got to look at satellite imagery. We have to diagnose those models. Sometimes a model may be totally off, and we essentially just throw that one in the trash for the time being until it gets back on track. Some models won't take into account snow on the ground. So that's where the meteorologist comes into play. You get snow on the ground, and it's more than likely going to be much cooler at the surface. But we also have to think about microclimates across the region whenever we're making a forecast. This could play a major factor in the development of inversion. So we've been talking about spraying applications a lot in this podcast. And again, those microclimates will impact that aspect. Some of these low-lying sheltered locations will get much cooler than the surrounding area, maybe much cooler than a weather station 10 miles down the road. So, but yeah, that's just some of the misconceptions I guess I encounter in ag weather. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you expanding on that, because when you're dealing with the weather, I mean, I really look up to you guys as meteorologists, because I'm like, I don't have any idea. We have to rely on people that understand weather patterns more than what I could. But you were talking, you started with a story too, but do you have any success stories from farmers that have benefited from your all service, and maybe from the app too? I don't know if you have one that just sticks out to you.
Yeah. With the app, I've got a lot of positive comments. I think the main one is the whole no ads aspect. A lot of people are enjoying that, but one in particular really sticks out to me. I had a farmer from Boyle County, lives way out in the country. Internet is, on a good day, they're getting 1 bar. And she told me that this is the only weather app they can use out at her farm consistently because ads aren't bogging down the system. So she really appreciated that aspect. I didn't even take that into account whenever we developed this thing. Just hearing that was one of the best compliments I could have got on this app. So.
Yeah, well, I didn't realize y'all had more than one phase to the app, so I'm looking forward to some of those other features coming out as well. But I know with having an app, I mean, it updates according to how you've got your phone set up. So I really appreciate all of that information that you've shared with us today. Is there any other information or like resources that you all have that you could send some of our listeners to?
Yeah, we'll put the information for the weather app below this podcast whenever it comes out. I'll put information on the ag weather update. I think that's a good way to stay informed on past, present, and future weather conditions across the Bluegrass State. Again, growing season's right around the corner. It's hard to believe we're almost halfway through February. Farm show's coming up. Everyone's going to be gearing up pretty soon. But yeah, I'll send all that information your way and we'll push it under the podcast. So
that'll be great. I really appreciate, Matt, you coming on the Sunshine Gardening podcast with us today, and I look forward to hearing from you again in the future.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us for episode 41 of the Sunshine Gardening Podcast featuring guest Matt Dixon. We hope you found this discussion insightful and kindly invite you to join us for our next episode. If you're interested in learning more about the new Weather Alert app, please check out the show notes for episode 41. The show notes are posted over on the blog at warrencountyagriculture.com. Now, if you enjoyed today's episode, we would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us connect with more listeners and improve our content. Additionally, feel free to reach out with any questions, feedback, or suggestions for future podcast episodes. Remember to subscribe to the Sunshine Gardening Podcast for more gardening insights, and join us next time as we explore new ways to cultivate the garden of your dreams. Until then, happy gardening!
Thanks for listening to the Sunshine Gardening Podcast with Kristin Hildabrand. If you enjoyed today's content, make sure to hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts to catch future segments of the Sunshine Gardening Podcast. Gardeners, keep on digging and learning more about gardening so the sun shines brighter over your Kentucky garden. The Sunshine Gardening Podcasts with Kristin Hildabrand is a production of the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service.